The price of living for everyone is betraying yourself every single day. There is a prison that has no bars, no guards, no chains, but it is the cruelest of all. It's the prison of the one who smiles when they want to scream, of the one who says yes when deep down they want to walk away, of the one who adapts, stays quiet, disguises themselves, just to avoid being rejected. And the worst part is that this prison has an open door all the time, but almost no one dares to cross it. This audiobook is a call to cross that door, to let go of the weight of pleasing, to stop begging for smiles, and to start respecting yourself like you never have before. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You did not come to fit in. You came to grow. You came to walk firmly. You came to be free. From Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius, the wise Stoics knew that those who live seeking the approval of others are slaves to their gaze. And there is no greater sadness than losing yourself just to be liked by others. Here begins a path, one where you will not become selfish, but you will become brave, one where you will learn to say no with love, and to say yes only when that yes is also one you would say to yourself. Get ready, because if you listen to this until the end, you will not be the same. We begin. Chapter 1. The silent poison of pleasing. No one wants to admit it, but almost everyone has felt it. That invisible need to be liked, to be accepted, to avoid someone being upset with you. It starts with a fake smile, then with a favor you didn't want to do, and it ends up becoming a lifestyle that slowly erases you. And do you know what's the most dangerous part of trying to please everyone? That in doing so, you end up betraying the only person you are going to live with for the rest of your life, yourself. In ancient Rome, Epictetus saw this clearly. There were no social networks, but the same fear existed. The fear of not fitting in, of not being liked, of not meeting other people's expectations. And he would say, if you insist on pleasing everyone, you will end up being a slave to each of them. And he was right. Today we live in a world where people measure their worth by the likes they receive, where someone swallows their truth just to avoid making others uncomfortable, where peace is sacrificed just to not lose a relationship. Pleasing may seem like a virtue, but it is a gentle poison. It makes you feel useful, loved, approved, but it steals something you should never give away: your center. There is a story that illustrates this. The one about the donkey, the old man, and the boy. The three are walking with the donkey. First, the old man rides and people murmur, "How selfish that old man, letting the boy walk." Then they switch. The boy rides and people say, "How disrespectful, the young one on top and the elder on foot." Then both get on, and now they say, "Poor donkey, what abuse." They both get off, and then they say, "How foolish, they have a donkey and don't use it." The lesson? You will never please everyone. Don't even try. Do what your conscience tells you is right, because the world will always have an opinion. A Stoic person does not live seeking acceptance. They live seeking coherence. Does what you say align with what you do? Does what you do align with what you believe? And does what you believe align with who you truly are? When you achieve that harmony, you no longer need approval. Self-respect is enough, and that is the respect that brings the most peace. Today, I want you to remember this. Every time you say yes just out of fear, you are saying no to your soul, and that price is far too high. An unbreakable person doesn't fear rejection because they no longer depend on approval to feel valuable. In the next chapter, you will discover why no one loves the one who sells themselves for approval, and how authenticity is the only kind of love that truly attracts respect. Chapter 2. No one loves the one who sells themselves for approval. You can give everything. You can try your hardest. You can even betray yourself just to be liked. But in the end, no one respects those who don't respect themselves, and much less loves those who don't love themselves. What's most painful? That sometimes you do all of this believing you are earning other people's affection, when in reality, you are only losing your own. We live in an era where external validation seems like a prize, and many are willing to pay with their soul to get it. But history shows an uncomfortable truth. People admire more the one who stands firm, the one who doesn't bend for a like or a fake smile, than the one who changes shape just to please. Epictetus said that freedom begins the moment you stop needing what others think of you, and he understood this perfectly because he himself was a slave, but never a slave to the opinion of others. Imagine for a second someone who bends over backwards to fit in, who says yes to everything, who always gives in, who never causes discomfort. Does that inspire you? Does it make you want to follow them? Or does it make you pity them? The truth is that deep down, we feel rejection toward those who sell themselves cheap, and admiration toward those who, even when they tell us what we don't want to hear, remain true to themselves. Authenticity has a price. Sometimes it is temporary loneliness. Other times it is judgment. But it also has a reward, inner peace, and the natural attraction generated by someone who is not begging for approval, but walking with firmness. There is a very clear psychological principle. The more you try to please, the less value you project, because the one who shines doesn't need to beg for attention, and the one who knows who they are doesn't need to plead to be accepted. There are many current examples. Think of personalities like Keanu Reeves. He doesn't try to please the press, he doesn't follow trends, he isn't chasing applause, and yet, or perhaps precisely because of this, millions respect him. Or think of someone close to you, maybe that friend or family member who isn't the most charming nor the most diplomatic. But when they speak, you know they say what they think. And that's why you trust them. Authentic love, real respect, are born from firmness, not from emotional sacrifice. If you sell yourself to be loved, you will end up being invisible. But if you remain authentic, you will attract those who truly matter. An unbreakable person doesn't need to pretend, because their essence speaks louder than any mask. And in the next chapter, you will discover how every time you try to fit in, you are abandoning a part of yourself, and how pleasing everyone can be the cruelest form of self-betrayal. Chapter 3. The face of self-betrayal. There is a betrayal that makes no noise, leaves no evidence, is never shouted, and is not easily forgiven. It's the betrayal you commit against yourself every time you say yes when you wanted to say no. Every time you swallow a truth to avoid making someone uncomfortable. Every time you mold yourself into a shape that doesn't belong to you just to keep being accepted. Pleasing everyone sounds like a noble goal, but in reality, it's a prison without bars. The more you try to fit in, the more you distort yourself. The more you accommodate, the less you recognize your own reflection. And there comes a moment when you no longer know who you are. You only know what others expect from you. Imagine you are a living statue, and every time someone has an opinion about you, you change your shape a little. One wants you to be funnier, another wants you to be more submissive, Another wants you to be more successful, and you mold yourself, adapt, modify, until one day you look in the mirror and no longer recognize your form. You no longer know what you wanted, or what you thought. You only know you are no longer there. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that it is a tragedy to see someone fear the judgment of others more than losing their own soul. And that is exactly what we do when we live only to please. In everyday life, this happens all the time. The professional who chooses a career only because their parents expected it. The woman who stays in a relationship for fear of what people will say. The man who hides his sensitivity to appear strong. The young person who says yes to everything for fear of rejection. Each one of them is abandoning themselves in order to survive in a world that demands masks. And the cruelest thing is that when you finally fail, when you inevitably don't manage to please everyone, those for whom you molded yourself are not there to pick you up because they never loved you. They only loved the character you created. The soul cracks slowly every time you ignore what you feel, every time you cross your own boundaries to be accepted, every time you forget your inner voice to follow the crowd. But here is the power. You can stop betraying yourself. You can return to yourself. You can begin to rebuild from who you are and not from what they expect you to be. An unbreakable person does not abandon themselves because they know their greatest loyalty is not to approval, but to their own truth. And in the next chapter, we will talk about the false hero, the one everyone admires on the outside, but who is broken on the inside, and how you can begin to take off the mask with dignity, to reconnect with your true self. Chapter 4. The false hero and the real you. There are people who seem to have it all: admiration, success, smiles from others, lights shining in their path. But inside, they are falling, because they have built an entire life around pleasing others and have forgotten themselves. Robin Williams made the world laugh, but cried in silence. Jim Carrey, at the height of his fame, confessed that he played characters even off-set because he didn't know who he was without a mask. They weren't weak, they were human. They were examples of how the desire to please can become a burden that breaks you from within. This chapter is not to judge, but to understand that many times those who please the most are the ones who suffer the most, because they are constantly striving to maintain an image, a character, a role that no longer represents them. Perhaps you have lived this yourself. Maybe you are the strong one in the group, the one who never shows weakness, the one who always has a kind word, the one who yields, the one who never causes discomfort. But how many times have you wanted to scream and stayed silent? How many times have you felt alone, even surrounded by people who love you? That inner disconnection is the sign that you have fed your character more than your soul. And when that happens, even praise feels empty, because you know it's not for you, but for the version of you that you invented to survive. The real you doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to be liked by everyone, only needs to be heard, needs space, needs to breathe. Taking off the mask is not an act of weakness, it is an act of courage, because you know you may lose the applause, but you would rather win yourself. A current example is the silent quitting many people are doing in their jobs. They don't leave entirely, but they no longer smile out of obligation, no longer say yes to everything, no longer pretend to be okay. It's a silent revolution, a way of saying, I don't want to keep acting anymore. The difference between the false hero and the real you is that one acts to be loved, and the other reveals themselves to be free. An unbreakable person doesn't need to disguise themselves to be valued, because they understand that value lies in authenticity, not in performance. And in the next chapter, you will discover why disappointing others is sometimes the purest act of self-love, and how saying no can become your most honest form of respect. Chapter 5. The Power of Disappointing with Purpose. Sometimes, disappointing someone is the greatest act of loyalty toward yourself. It sounds harsh, even selfish, but it is necessary, because you were not born to live according to others' expectations. You were born to be you, with your voice, your boundaries, your choices. From childhood, we are taught to avoid disappointment, to please, to say yes even when we wanted to say no, to adapt so no one feels bad with us. And so we grow, programmed for approval, terrified of failing others, without realizing that we are failing ourselves. Epictetus said that if you want to be happy, start by ignoring what does not depend on you. And one of the things you cannot control is how others react when you choose your own path. Disappointing is not always breaking. Sometimes it is saving yourself. Saving yourself from carrying what is not yours, from holding on to relationships that hurt you, jobs that don't fulfill you, commitments that suffocate you. In real life, we see it every day. People who stay in marriages due to family pressure, children who study careers by mandate, employees who don't quit out of fear of what people will say, and deep down, they all know they are living a lie, but they don't want to disappoint. What if you learned to disappoint with dignity? What if you understood that your freedom is worth more than others' comfort? What if you began to respect yourself so much that you could no longer stand pleasing at the cost of your peace? Think of the people you respect the most. They are probably not the ones who always said yes, but the ones who dared to carve their own path, even when no one understood them. Being unbreakable does not mean being hard. It means being clear. And sometimes, to be clear, you must disappoint. Saying no is not a lack of love. It is love well directed. It is knowing that if you do not prioritize yourself, no one will do it for you. In the next chapter, we will talk about the deep freedom you feel when you no longer need others' approval, and how that detachment brings you closer to your truest purpose. Chapter 6. The Freedom of Losing Others' Approval. True freedom doesn't arrive when you have time, money, or success. It arrives when you no longer care about being understood by everyone, when you live from your truth and not from what others expect from you. Because as long as you need others' approval, you will be a slave, even if you wear a crown. From the moment we are born, the world trains us to be accepted, not to be authentic. And without realizing it, we begin to shape the way we speak, dress, behave, even dream, to fit in, to avoid discomfort, to belong. But there is a price to pay when your worth depends on others' applause, and that price is the loss of your essence. Stoicism is not coldness, it is clarity. It is living without a mask, without double speech, without having to justify who you are. Marcus Aurelius said, "Perfect tranquility consists in the good ordering of the mind, in your own kingdom. And how can you order your mind if every decision you make is weighed by others' judgment?" Think of someone like Rosalia, an artist who started with traditional roots and then broke with everything established. And although many criticized her for mixing styles, cultures, sounds, and forms, she didn't stop. She didn't ask permission. She didn't ask for approval. Her authenticity opened paths where there were no footprints. And although she didn't please everyone, she built something of her own, and powerful. That's how inner freedom works. It's not about doing the opposite out of rebellion. It's about not needing applause to move forward. When you lose the fear of being rejected, a space of power opens inside you, because you are no longer trying to please everyone, but to build yourself. And it's not that nothing matters anymore. It's that being true to yourself matters more than being liked by the world, and that changes everything. An unbreakable person is not the one who always pleases, but the one who can walk alone, when necessary, the one who is not afraid of being misunderstood, the one who does not negotiate their identity for affection. In the next chapter, I will show you why that relationship with yourself, that daily inner conversation, is the origin of all power, and how beginning to admire yourself is the real start of your greatness. Chapter 7. Liking yourself is the beginning of power. There's a question we were never taught to ask ourselves. Do you like yourself? Not if you're perfect, not if others approve of you, not if you meet every expectation, but if you can look in the mirror and feel proud of the person you're building every day. The world pushes you to seek external validation. It rewards you for fitting in. It applauds you if you imitate. It follows you if you adapt to what's already been proven. But no one teaches you to feel good about yourself when you do the right thing, even if no one sees. When you make a hard decision, but one that aligns with your values. When you are yourself, even if that means losing approval or status. Stoicism is not a rigid philosophy. It's a practice of inner power. And that power begins the day you become someone you yourself respect. When you can say, I didn't betray myself. And that, even if no one else notices, is a profound victory. Think of someone like Zendaya, a public figure who has turned down roles that don't represent her, has defended her space, has managed her fame with integrity. She doesn't seek to please in everything. She seeks to feel good about her decisions, and that is reflected in her growth, not only as an artist, but as a person. It's not about pleasing the world, it's about not disappointing herself. When you achieve that, you no longer define yourself by whether they like you or reject you. Whether they understand you or criticize you, you define yourself by your coherence, by your inner peace, by that silent strength that says, I did the right thing even if it wasn't easy. And that strength is the foundation of all greatness. Liking yourself is not egocentrism, it's a root, because no one can build something solid on insecurity, on doubt, on the guilt of living to please everyone but yourself. The one who feels good with themselves doesn't need approval, but attracts it, doesn't need recognition, but generates it, doesn't need power, because they already carry it within. And when that happens, you stop seeking love as a necessity, and you begin to offer it from fullness, from truth, from inner abundance. In the next and final chapter, we'll talk about what happens when you stop begging for love, about what happens in your soul when you finally walk with your head held high, without fear of disappointing, because you found what you should never have lost: yourself. Chapter 8. The unbreakable soul of the one who no longer begs for love. There comes a point when you stop running after attention. You stop adjusting your words to be liked. You stop silencing your opinions out of fear of rejection. And in that instant, something new is born within you. It's not arrogance, it's dignity, it's not coldness, it's respect, it's not pride, it's self-love. Begging for love is living in debt with yourself. It's giving everything hoping someone will return a little. It's placing your worth in someone else's hands, believing that if they love you, then you're valuable. But the one who awakens, the one who has gone through the previous chapters, understands that the love that truly transforms is the one that is not begged for, but chosen to give, from fullness, not from lack. When Epictetus taught his students, he didn't speak of love as weakness. He spoke of the strong soul, the one that doesn't depend on the reaction of others to remain firm. He said, "Do you want to be invincible? Then don't fight for things that don't depend on you. And forced love, chaste approval, bought acceptance never depend on you." Look at someone like Anthony Hopkins, who after decades of career, of awards and recognition, decided not to live for applause, but for peace. He once said, "I got tired of trying to please everyone. Now I do what makes sense to me," and that didn't make him less loved. It made him freer. The unbreakable soul is not the one that never suffers. It's the one that no longer betrays itself. It's the one that has learned to be alone without feeling empty. It's the one that stands firmly, knowing that if someone wants to leave, it won't be them who's lost, because they've already found themselves. And no, it doesn't mean you stop loving, but that you love without lowering yourself, without losing yourself, without begging, because the one who no longer begs for love becomes magnetic, whole, powerful, no longer needs to ask for space, because they create it, no longer begs for attention, because they radiate presence. This is the point where this path ends, and another begins, one where you don't have to become someone else to be loved, where you don't have to please to be valuable, where you can walk, not to be followed, but because you finally know where you're going. And when a person walks in truth, always, even if at first they walk alone, they end up surrounded by those who also stopped begging and learned to love from freedom and not from need. If you've made it this far, you are no longer the same person who began this journey. Now you understand something many take years or a lifetime to discover. That living to please is dying slowly. That saying yes when you want to say no is betraying yourself. That chasing approval is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. You've learned that no one truly loves the one who sells themselves for acceptance. That pleasing everyone is the most silent way to abandon yourself. That wearing masks to fit in is losing the face that makes you unique. That you must have the courage to disappoint others in order not to disappoint yourself. You've discovered that freedom is not doing whatever you want, but no longer needing validation from those who don't understand your worth. That true power begins when you learn to like yourself, when you can be with yourself in silence without feeling less, without demanding yourself to be someone else, without begging for love where there is none, and most importantly, you've understood that the soul of the one who no longer begs to be loved becomes unbreakable because they have chosen themselves, because they have respected themselves, because they have come home. Now, what can you do with all this? First, start today by listening to yourself before speaking, by feeling before pleasing, by asking yourself, does this represent me? Does this make me feel worthy to myself? Because if you don't like yourself, no one will ever truly please you. Second, set boundaries without guilt. Not everyone deserves access to your time, to your energy, to your heart. Not because they're bad, but because you're no longer willing to lower yourself to fit in. Third, surround yourself with those who don't ask you to stop being yourself to belong, with those who challenge you to grow, but don't punish you for being real. And finally, remember this simple yet powerful truth. You were not born to please everyone. You were born to be yourself, in peace, with purpose, with strength, and when you are, without masks, without fear, without need, you will attract what truly vibrates with your essence, not out of obligation, but because at last you are walking your own path, and nothing, absolutely nothing, is more magnetic than that. If this audiobook spoke to you, if at any point you felt it was describing what you have lived in silence, then you are not alone. You are part of a silent community of people who are awakening, choosing themselves, and building a life with purpose. I invite you to subscribe right now, so you don't miss the next audiobooks, because each one has been created for you with real stories, deep ideas, and practical tools you can apply from the very first minute. Also explore the other titles in this collection, like When Epictetus Spoke with God, Do It Even If It Hurts, or Your Time Is Everything, because each one is a door, an intimate conversation with yourself, and a reminder that you are stronger than you think.